This is the opportunity for me to be graced by two well-known professionals in the field, Rachel Posman and John Calhoun. I did get the surname right on that one. Perfect. Um, and yeah, I'm looking forward to them discussing about their book, the Design Conductor, which they're just about to release very, very soon. Rachel, John, would you like to give an introduction about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us on. So yeah, I've been doing design ops for most of my professional career, although I had a previous career as a ballet dancer. So I actually started dancing ballet when I was 5.
Okay.
I dropped out of high school at 16 to do it professionally, and I did travel around doing that. So I have like a background in like a core background in like arts, creative spaces. So that's always been like core to me. But then I was like, I should probably get a real job at some point, pays more money. So I was decided to go back to school. And I actually asked my husband what I should do because I was so far removed from academia. And he's like, business, you can kind of use that for anything. So that's what I did. I went to Berkeley's business school, but coming out of there, I knew I wanted like to be in the creative space. So I started doing program management in design agencies straight out of college. So yeah, I did that and then worked at some cool places like Adaptive Path, which was really kind of leading the way in service and experience design. And got acquired by Capital One. And then I stood up design and research operations at Uber Eats. And then I moved over to Salesforce with John to stand up the central design ops team. And in the middle there, I also got an MBA at a design school, which is a crazy thing. But it was an MBA in design strategy. So it kind of merged both worlds of mine, which was like, I am very operational. I'm very like Virgo. So like everything should be in order. Um, Plus like love design, love creative spaces. So it was a mashup. And that's what this role is to me too. It's like a mashup of two of the things that I love and that I kind of am good at. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. John,
Yeah, so I've been doing design ops for almost 8 years now at Salesforce. I've really only had one other job before that. I was a video game designer and producer for 17 years. So that's where I cut my chops, without calling it design ops back then. But, I was a designer for a while, then I was a producer. You're making things, you're getting things out the door. It's the perfect marriage of design and operations. We just didn't call it back then. And so when I decided I wanted to get out of the games and into something that was a little bit more stable, this is where I found myself. So I've been doing design ops ever since.
that's some really good career stories that you just pointed out. And I think before we delve into the book, and you just mentioned something that really hit the point for me, John. I mean, you talk about design and operations being combined into one and how that's a perfect harmony from your personal background career. I would like you to expand a bit on that. Why do you think design and operations merge so well in today's design climate?
Well, one of the themes in the book is that design ops is design, right? We like to say that over and over again. But what we mean by that is there are methodologies and techniques and ways of thinking that designers either know intuitively or have learned. So imagine the double diamond of discovery, definition, development, and deployment, right? You know, we can use that methodology in operations, right? Don't just get stuff done. Think about what the problem space is. Be really clear about defining the problem before you start to actually execute a plan. Like that's an example of how you might use design thinking and design operations. We just happen to work in a space where we like to be around designers or we are designers ourselves. And so we also understand how the work of design gets done. We know the tools, we know the practices, we know the pitfalls and pain points, right? So not only are we able to operationalize the workspace around our designers, but we're also able to come in and troubleshoot specific challenges, right? Because we know what that work is like, both the partnerships, the tools, the challenges, and we get stuff done.
Yeah. Rachel, do you want to chime in on that one?
I mean, John summed it up perfectly, but I started in at Adaptive Path on service design teams. So I was actually in the weeds with service designers on service design projects. But my role, this was it's a different sort of flavor of what design ops looks like today, but I think it's what it kind of grounded me in how I approach design ops. But I was in small service design teams. So we had, like a service designer, graphic designer, product designer, and then design lead and me sort of taking on these big, meaty, end-to-end challenges in companies where we were designing everything, every touch point, so I was like in there with them doing the design research, doing the design strategy, synthesis. But then when it came to making, so when a screen needed to be made or like a printed materials needed to be made, my role shifted to, okay, how do we make this real? How do I get this live with customers? So then I was partnering with legal, marketing, compliance, like figuring out how do we actually get this to happen. So sort of removing the roadblocks, taking it from design to reality. So my sort of approach now is still the same process, which is using design strategy, design thinking, service design, but we're designing operational systems, processes, experience, tools for designers and for, broader than designers, but that's sort of the core. But yeah, I think that's sort of how we both approach it, using design to design operations.
See, I fell into design ops same time, 8 years ago. And I think I fell into it and I had a passion for it because I had the opportunity to build teams from the ground up. And I saw how the processes had been done in many, many different companies, Fortune 500 all the way to very small companies. And I saw that there was a lot of waste in that process, or there was a lot of, how should you say, there was not a process in the way ideas are being created, have been formulated and being pushed out to production. And I saw that process is completely broken. And that's what gave me the passion to follow design ops and to really bring in some of the key principles. And this is why I really want to delve into this next question with yourself. I mean, and obviously it's a book. It's going to be one of the main topics of this podcast. But what inspired you to write this book in the first place? Who wants to take that? Rachel?
So this is the first book on design operations by design ops. So there's other books that might talk about design ops in a chapter or something that's written by design, but sort of on another topic. But there hasn't been like a go-to resource for design operations for all of these years. So it's kind of been something that we all been wanting and needing. But then I think personally, we both did a talk at Design Ops Summit a few years back now at the Rosenfeld Design Ops Summit. And the topic we were speaking on really resonated with people. We sort of talked about how we organize our teams within Salesforce to kind of approach two different problems that design teams are facing. And there were a lot of people reaching out, and it sort of is still used now as a framework for organizing our teams. So I think since then, it's just been a lot of activity and thought and thinking around sort of nerding out on this topic for me personally, that when Lou Rosenfeld approached us to do this, I was like, yes. And I think John and I have been working together for so long, for something years, that we have like come at it from different angles. So this was sort of a passion project for us both, I think. But yeah, and also it's just needed. There's lots of people coming into this practice and sort of searching for
Yeah, when I think we started this journey back in 2022, does that sound about right? So 2 years ago. And if you look back at where we were 2 years ago, design was still growing, tech was still growing, design ops was still. So we were sitting at a moment where it felt very real to invite more people into our practice and start to have some conditions and codify some best practices that came from design ops practitioners for design ops practitioners, right? Like, we wanted to capture lightning in a bottle and be like, hey, look, this practice is still growing and we need to say something about it because we've been doing it for a number of years. And so we're like, yes, let's write the book. And then it was interesting that as we were writing the book, there was a downturn in the economy and was laying people off, especially designers and especially designers, practitioners. Right? And so it gave us a moment to also expand on what we were living through and how we were living through it, how we were adapting and changing our practice in real time. And so we put that into the book as well. So the book kind of grew from hey, let's define and have a baseline to how do we also manage change? How do we manage burnouts and team morale and team health? How do you make sure that you are still being creative and discovering what users need while delivering what the business needs to survive? So that's why it took 2 years to write this book and why it's so freaking heavy in terms of weight, not tone. A lot of pages, and I guess we had a lot to say by the time we were all said and done.
Yeah, and we are not like the only experts like here. We are like I think design ops community is really special, but so we brought in a lot of voices from our community, from the industry and the space. So you'll find lots of other voices, not just ours in here to tell their stories and experiences. But to John's point, we have a whole chapter on design maturity and how design ops sort of responds or what we focus on, what it looks like, what might be different at different stages of design maturity, because it's a broad spectrum. We don't do the same thing consistently, and not every design program manager, everyone will kind of look a little bit different based on what team they're on, the maturity of that team, the leader of that team, etc.
That's brilliant, because the typical question that I normally get, or the team normally gets on a day-to-day basis, is when to bring in design ops. Now, you just mentioned about maturity, like, certain maturity stages is the best time to bring in a design ops practitioner. I wanted to get your take on it. Do you think design ops is only applicable to teams who have a certain maturity skill? Or do you think that it's applicable to all the maturity stages?
So I always say that like design ops has to be done no matter what size the team is, what maturity the team is. So whether or not you have somebody with that official role and title, the work is going to be done. And if you don't have that person, it's going to be done by a design leader, designer, and for, smaller teams that can work that, you might not need a dedicated DPM when there's only 3 people on a design team. But at a certain point, and I don't remember the number, I can look in the book, that becomes too much for a design leader to own and sort of do all the strategy and creative direction in a design team. And so it gets in the way of doing good work.